My name is Geordy Murphy, and I'm the director of iMental Health Counseling, and I am also a registered provisional psychologist, and I work with individuals, couples, and teens. We're going to talk about physical boundaries. Have you ever had somebody who gets into your physical space, especially now with social distancing? You'll be at the supermarket, and all of a sudden you have somebody standing too close to you, and they're coughing, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, okay, don't you know? Like, hello, what's going on here?" Right? What do you say? Do you say something awkwardly to that stranger? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it would be nice to just be able to say, like, "Hey, you know what? You're in my space." But sometimes it can just feel downright awkward, don't you think? In our culture, we're so polite when it comes to even setting those kinds of boundaries. So, physical boundaries might mean the space that we have between us and another person, or, it might even mean, maybe you're a hugger. I'm not really a hugger. Uh, I always feel awkward if somebody I don't really know very well comes up to me, gives me a hug. I'm usually a little cold. So it's really a matter of what's your physical preference when it comes to touch or creating that distance between you and somebody else. What's okay touch and what's not okay? Those are things that we can actually have conversations about. I used to have somebody I used to have a friend who he would actually come up to people and like bite them on the ear or give them a weird hug from behind. And I think it was my sister who actually set a boundary and said, "You know what? I am just not comfortable with that." And so there's some things in regards to our physical boundaries that we actually need to we need to respect how we feel about that. Again, I've talked about what we feel in our body in the past, and how that can often give us a sense for what is right and wrong physically. And so that might be one of those things where you feel kind of uncomfortable with that type of physical touch, or that person that's standing too close to you, or whatever that might look like. Um, are you able to set that boundary and verbalize that? So so we can have physical boundaries when it comes to our intimate partners, our close friends, and then also strangers. What does that look like? And so when we begin to set these boundaries, we might think about, okay, what are my preferences? Am I okay with hugs? Am I okay when somebody how do I respond when somebody's standing too close to me? Do you feel like it would be better for you to say something to that person who keeps violating your personal space, or are you just going to kind of sit there and let it happen while you're just building resentment for that other person? When we're even setting physical boundaries, we have to think about that if we're not willing to speak up and say something, then it's kind of it's kind of on us in a way. We have to set that tone for what's okay. And so if we look at the property analogy again, and we're thinking about what's okay on my property, that's a really great example when it comes to physical boundaries. What's okay for you? What's your bubble? I had a friend who used to say, "You're getting in my bubble." And he even used some humor, I think, to make it feel a little bit comfortable, because he felt awkward setting that boundary. So we might think to ourselves, this is pretty straightforward. It's a no-brainer. This person knows that they get in my space, so why do I need to say anything? It's actually really important to verbalize our boundaries. Just like that property analogy, we have to put that line between us and that other person, and we need to tell them what's not appropriate and tell them when they're crossing that line. Have you ever heard that saying, or have you ever said, that person really gets under my skin? Again, an example of that boundary. That person's getting under your skin, so we need to say something. We need to verbalize our needs and be clear about it. One of the things that I'd like to emphasize about physical boundaries is that we need to be the ones that set the tone. We need to actually verbalize that boundary to the other person. Sometimes what we do is we assume that that person is going to get it, but we can't assume that. We have to be the ones that set the tone. One of the important things to remember is that you've actually made the effort to say something instead of being quiet. So by practicing this, you're living according to your values and what's important to you. And that's actually really important regardless if that person respects your boundary or not. And we all want people to respect our boundaries, and it's just the likelihood that some people are not going to listen. But you did your due diligence to be assertive, to speak out, maybe to be respectful of the other person, right? So you're living according to your authentic self, which actually means that you're living in more freedom. So in terms of somebody violating your personal space or your physical boundaries, what do you do if somebody's just not listening or they're really not respecting that? That can look a lot different in different contexts. It might even be in a context of a community where you feel unsafe about somebody who's being very close with you, and you've said something, or you've tried to set that boundary and they're really not listening. I think we really have to do our due diligence at seeking out those people that that we trust in authority, that would be able to help handle those situations, because maybe somebody's not going to listen to you, or they're really blatantly disrespecting that physical boundary. So best place for that best thing to do is to find a safe person to talk to about it, and to see what can be done, whether that means even doing something like a physical restraining order, or if you need to report something to the authorities. I think it would be best to consult with somebody on that.